My name is Randy Rubenstein, and welcome to the Mastermind Parenting Podcast. At Mastermind Parenting, we're on a mission to support strong-willed kids and the families that love them. Hello, hello. How is everyone this week? I have a fun conversation to share with all of you. Aren't you sick of the episodes where it's just me? This week is not that. I had an amazing conversation with a mom, and you know, when you talk with someone new and you just have chemistry and you just realize that they speak the same language as you, but they have different things to add to the conversation that you hadn't thought of, and you maybe have things that they hadn't thought of. Well, that's how I feel about the conversation I had with Michelle Grosser. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She helps high-achieving women regulate their nervous systems. Don't tune out. I swear this is an amazing conversation with practical tips, and you're going to relate, right? We don't just talk about fluff. We don't use all the conceptual language that I think so many people are using these days. Like, we really unpack these concepts and tell stories, tell personal stories, tell stories about clients. I think many of the stories you guys are going to relate to. She is sort of like, this is her jam, like understanding the nervous system so that you can overcome anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout. Burnout is part of her story, so that you can live a life that feels purposeful. So her background is she was a trial attorney for 10 years. She's a pastor. She's a nervous system fitness expert. I don't know what that means, but she really did. She was very knowledgeable about the nervous system. She's a certified master life coach, and she's the host of the top 20 parenting podcast, The Calm Mom. Through somatic and neuroscience-based modalities, she coaches women to reconnect with the wisdom of their bodies, to discover what's beneath the triggers and emotions so they can heal and find peace in the present. She deeply believes that the most profound thing we can offer our children is our own healing. She and her husband have 2 daughters and live in Miami, Florida. So enjoy this conversation. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Michelle Grosser. Hi, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so excited that we get to be together and have this conversation today. I was actually just looking at your website and I'm like, oh man, there's so much overlap between what you teach and kind of the nervous system work that I do. And especially my audience being like a lot of moms, obviously, but women who are trying to learn how to manage their own triggers and their nervous system and how that all factors into parenting and the things that our kids bring up in us. So I think that there's going to be such good overlap in the spaces in which we teach.
Well, I will tell you, I tend to be a non-linear person. I do everything out of order. So it makes my life so much harder, but now I'm just kind of accepting it. It just is the way it is. And so
Sure.
Mastermind parenting, the reason I named it Mastermind is because I realized that, I have control of this thing, my brain, and the sentences that are, going through my brain and what I'm making everything mean. And maybe I can question some of these sentences, and maybe I can question what I'm making a child's behavior mean and what it actually means. And so what now I'm saying, okay, is however many years into this, I would say 10, but really 26 years into this. 10 years ago is when I started Mastermind Parenting. If you could heal from the neck up, I would be the winner. I would be the winner. If you could truly become a healthy human because you have controlled yourself from the neck up, like I'm all in. And that's what I was raising my hand for. And in the last few years, what I've learned is that we think we are thinking animals, but we are actually feeling animals. And so I was like, wait, I don't know. Can I curse on your podcast? I was like, F me.
Yeah.
I have to deal with this body.
Yeah.
And so I personally have really been um, like like really into the somatic practices and learning more about them. And so I'm so excited to talk to you because this has been a thing for so many years where
Yes.
I'm teaching parents, well, what are you making this mean? What's the sentence
Yeah.
going through your head? And I'm thinking about this one mom in particular who has, who I've been working with for the last she started with me last summer.
Okay.
And her big thing was she has an autoimmune,
Mm.
she has an autoimmune disease. She has had herself tested. She knows that she lives in a high cortisol state.
Yep.
Um, she has said, I've talked to countless therapists.
Mhm.
I The problem is that when my daughter won't listen or hits her sister or right,
Yeah.
does these things that trigger me,
Yes.
I I just react.
Yeah.
How do I stop myself from reacting?
Yes.
And she's like, no one can tell me. And
Yeah.
so I've been working with her. But the truth of the matter is that where she is now, like she's had some improvements, but she continues to boomerang back to that reactive state.
Hmm.
And so now she's working with a somatic therapist.
Yes.
And because I said, look, you've had a lot of improvements, but it's the same issue that I remember early
Yeah.
on you were talking to me about. I think what I've learned now is there's no way around it. I
Hmm.
want you to truly work with a somatic therapist. And this is supposed to be like, I taught her the term titration. Like
Hmm.
it's supposed to be that slow process. I love Peter Levine and
Hmm.
somatic experiencing. Yeah.
Yes.
I could tell that from listening to some of your episodes, I could tell that you're familiar with
Yeah.
that. I don't know. Are you trained in that too?
I'm I am trained in it. I did a lot of training in it at the beginning of the pandemic,
Hmm.
specifically around somatic release and somatic experiencing. It's a lot of the work that I do. So yeah, I'm familiar with his work.
And I mean, what advice would you have
Hmm.
for a mom like that who knows what she should be doing, right? She
Hmm.
should stop herself. She should breathe. She should walk
Yeah.
away. She should disengage. But, most of the time she finds herself reacting.
Yes.
Um, like, what would you say to her is her first baby step to start disrupting that pattern?
Yes. Okay. So this is so good. This is one of my favorite things to talk about because this is also what a lot of women that come to me, they're like, I know what I need to do. I just can't, right? Like that
Right.
reactivity is so quick. So here's what we know about the nervous system to kind of start where you were starting about knowing all this stuff from the neck up. Our nervous system is our body's command center, right? So it's constantly taking in information, processing that information. It's controlling the things that we're thinking, the things that we're doing, the things that we're saying. All of this stuff is governed by our nervous system in our body. So it's these messages that are constantly being sent. Now, in our nervous system, we know that only 20% of the nerves in our body run from our head down to our body. The rest of those nerves, 80%, are afferent. And what that means is they actually run from our body up to our brain. So if we're only focusing from the neck up and doing the mindset stuff and the affirmations and the analyzing and the logic and the books and all of these things, which are helpful, that's only 20% of the messaging going on in our body. So if there's something that is stored in our subconscious, in our nervous system, that's very triggering for us, right? That's what happens as parents. We become triggered. That's usually messaging being stored in our body. And if our body, for some reason, doesn't feel safe or is triggered by something or it's frustrating or whatever it is, then we know that 80% of the messaging going on in our body, from our body up to our brain, is freaking out, right? Yelling, snapping, all of the things that we don't want to do. And it's because there's this dissonance. We know what we want to do in our mindset, right? But that's still only 20% of what's going on in our body. So if there's not a connection there in the messaging, that's when we get frustrated because we're like, I know what I want to do. I know what I need to do, but I just can't do it because our body's taking over. It's a losing tug of war every time, right? So it's learning how to bring safety, which feels a lot like when we say to have a regulated nervous system, to our body. And our body does not speak a verbal language. So we cannot just tell ourselves to calm down, right? We can't tell ourselves, oh, well, she's 5, she didn't mean it that way. Or she's 8, she doesn't know. Like whatever these things are that are necessary, going on in our mind, kind of what you were alluding to, asking ourselves like, well, what's the story you're telling yourself about that? Or what are you making that mean? We can analyze the heck out of it all day long and intellectualize it and try to understand it. Our body, our nervous system, our body doesn't understand that verbal language. So we have to communicate safety to our body in a way that it understands. So learning practices to bring safety, calm, presence, regulation, whatever word you want to use in that moment to your body is so powerful. Our body, while it doesn't understand a verbal language, it understands movement. It understands breath. It understands sound. It understands gentle and appropriate touch. It understands temperature changes, being in water, all of these different things, the sensations in our body are how we can communicate safety. And ultimately, when we are triggered by our children or anyone else, we become triggered because there's something subconsciously coming up in us that's like, this doesn't feel safe. This feels like a threat. So what we really need to learn how to do in those moments is, yes, have a plan and all these things, but we often can't resort to that right away. We first have to bring safety to our system, which will open up access to the parts of our brain that allow us then to use our higher levels of communication or the skills and the tools that we have to resolve conflict or whatever it is. So it's like, first bring safety to the body, learn how to do that. And then you can use all of the tools that we learn about, the parenting tools or mindset tools or things like that.
So how do you bring safety?
Okay. So I think the first thing is understanding there's 3 different circuits in our nervous system. So understanding where you're at when you're feeling like you need one of these tools, right? When you're feeling like you need a tool to help regulate your nervous system so you can respond instead of react. So catching yourself and having that awareness is huge. So one of the first of the 3 circuits is called our sympathetic nervous system. That's when we're in fight or flight. So a lot of us, when we feel triggered and we tend to like snap or yell or scream or, get so upset that, we want to throw something or whatever it is, that's awareness to us. Okay, I'm in my sympathetic nervous system. That's fight or flight energy. It's all this activating energy. I feel really angry or anxious. Then we have a parasympathetic nervous system. On the other end of that sympathetic energy, that fight or flight, we can also respond to stress or a threat or something that our kids are doing by going into a dorsal vagal collapse, we call it. And that's like a shutdown response. So there might be some of you listening that when you feel triggered by your kids, you do jump into that sympathetic energy and you get really angry. And then there's also another circuit that we might jump into when we're feeling triggered. And that's when we just want to shut down. We just dissociate. We just want to remove ourselves. We can't even respond, right? We just kind of freeze when we're feeling really activated. So knowing where you're at will then guide what you need to do. So for both of those, I think a good place to start is actually getting out of your head and into your body. So starting to be like, okay, what are the physical sensations that arise when I'm starting to feel triggered like this? We all have them. They're called somatic cues. We just don't notice them because we're going so fast right through our day that we don't stop. But we all have cues that arise when we're starting to feel that activating energy come up. So maybe your heart starts to race. Maybe the tone of your voice changes when your kids are kind of triggering you, right? Maybe your palms get sweaty or your face gets flushed or, you notice a scratch in your throat. And then there's something that's like a red flag going off. Hey, time to do something about this. And then you can go to your nervous system regulation tools. So it might be a particular kind of breathing that's really helpful. The type of breath that I teach that I think is the most effective, especially for parents, especially in the moment, because it's so quick and it's so powerful. It's called a physiological breath. And you just breathe in through your nose as deep as you can until it feels like your lungs are so full, you're at capacity. Then one more quick breath through your nose, just like and then out through your mouth as long and slow as you can.
I teach that too. I call it
Yeah.
you know what I call it? The sniff, sniff, slow.
Sniff, sniff, slow. That's it. And man, you know it. 2 times, 3 times through that, that's enough to shift the state of your nervous system. If you're someone that tends to go into that freeze response, man, go in your freezer, grab a pack of frozen vegetables, some frozen peas or whatever, put that on the back of your neck, hold ice cubes in your hands, rub them on the inside of your wrists. That temperature change can be enough to shift the state of your nervous system and get you out of everything that's going on to your head and into your body. Well, you'll be able to find more regulation. Movement is so powerful. So man, like just putting on a song and dancing, or like going and, screaming into a pillow, or, hitting a pillow, like all of these things that we hear, those are really great tools for shifting the state of your nervous system. It takes just a couple of minutes, and then you can come back and be like, all right, I'm in a space where I'm ready to deal with this. Right.
Well, let me pause on that for just a sec. We know that kids learn by what we model.
Yeah.
And I can imagine if you're a person like I was for so many years, the people listening, where it's like we're not in our bodies.
Yeah.
We want to think our way out of every situation. And we're crafty, we're smart, we're resourceful people. And it's like, yeah. Like, really, like, I'm really going to do those. Come on. What I want to say is, years and years ago, I learned, I want to say 20 years ago, I still wasn't a person that was aware really that I wasn't in my body.
Yeah.
But somebody that I trusted, it was a program that I was learning at the time. Because I was studying child development like a fiend. I didn't know why. I had no clue. All I know is that, again, I do everything nonlinear. So I was just following my own curiosity.
Awesome.
And I had an unhappy kid, a strong-willed kid. Really, I just had a kid that, whined a lot, complained a lot, was in a bad mood. And there was this fire in me. I was like, okay, I've got to make my kid happy. I've got to make my kid happy. So there was also I didn't realize this at the time. So much of what we do is just subconscious.
Yes.
And I grew up with a really, like, I don't know, an environment that felt unsafe emotionally, not really physically unsafe, but emotionally unsafe, a rageaholic, parent. And then one that was just kind of in that freeze response.
Yeah.
And so, I knew it wasn't an option for me to yell and bring a lot of fire, because I already had this unhappy kid. And I was just like, the problem I was trying to solve was, I want to, like, how do I get him to be happy? How do I, and so there was also that part of me that was not going to be the yelling parent. So I was trying to learn, and I was reading all these books that I would never have read before. And it was a very different time. There wasn't all this online learning.
No.
And my husband used to say, like, it's like you're cramming for a semester final. What the hell are you reading? And I'm like, shh. So I learned in this one program that you take a deep breath and a slow exhale. And I didn't know about vagal tone, or I didn't know about any of this. I don't even think I spoke nervous system language at the time. I for sure didn't. And I learned to take a deep breath in and a slow exhale out. And let me tell you, I was very dramatic about it. Like, I was like, to the point that my kids started sort of equating that sound with yelling. Like, they would be like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
They knew that, like, I was calming myself down in that moment. And years later, my daughter was like, when I hear you take a deep breath like that, Mom, when I hear you, she goes, when I hear you breathing, it literally makes me want to throat punch you. And I'm like it was triggering for her. I'm like, I'll take it. It's fine. It's okay. But I did this dramatic inhale and exhale. And then I had learned this mantra where I would say, like I would put my hands on my heart and I would literally close my eyes. And in my head, I would say, I'm safe, I'm calm, I can handle this. I'm safe,
Beautiful.
I'm calm, I can handle this.
I love
And
that.
it sounds so like I would never have said it out loud because that sounds weird, but I was saying this to myself. I was saying this to myself to the
Yeah.
point that it started to become second nature. Whenever I would get upset, I would take this deep breath in, this audible, dramatic exhale,
Yes.
whatever, and hands on my heart, close my eyes. I'm safe. I'm calm. I can handle this.
Yeah.
And I, I really think that whatever the practice is, like I think it's important for us to understand how our nervous system works.
Mm-hmm.
But little kids, but really kids of all ages, they give us the opportunity to practice this nervous system regulation, like
Yeah.
on the reg, all the time,
Yes.
all day,
Yes.
every day.
Yeah. They're pros at it.
It's almost like they're those personal trainers that are kicking our ass and they're like, hey, you haven't been in your body for many, many years and your nervous system is a mess.
That's
So
right.
I'm going to now give you all these opportunities to practice this new skill set so that
Exactly.
you can start to feel it in your body. So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, nothing cracks us open like our kids, right? Like being a parent. And they are such effective mirrors for every invitation for growth that the world could present to us, right? It's just like they see a little, crack and a little weakness and a little invitation where you're like, man, there's some healing that still needs to be done there. There's some growth that still needs to happen there. They'll find it and they'll press it. They're so gifted at that.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, now it's so cool to have people that are coaches and therapists trained in these
Mm.
somatic practices
Mhm.
because I learned this little tip and I used it. But if I had also been working with a practitioner, I think I
Yeah.
would have fast tracked so much of my own healing,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
I think that's true because it's so much of us are living in a disconnect, right? So it's like an iceberg. We're all just dealing with like everything that we can see visibly above the surface. But there's so much going on that's responsible for how we're showing up that we're not really addressing. So that disconnect there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very exciting to me that, I mean, I've been in my groups, I've really been talking a lot about people that are trained in the somatic modalities because
Yeah.
I'm like, it doesn't have to take you guys as long as it took me,
Yeah.
right? And it
Yeah.
just, I feel like because these kids, are such sponges, are such mirrors, they're so picking up on our energy, which
Mhm.
just that comment, I think, can just like make us flooded with mom guilt.
Yeah.
um, but when we accept the call to get back into our bodies,
Yeah.
right? Because they feel when we're not in our bodies. They
Yes.
feel when our cortisol levels are, heightened all the time. And it
Yeah.
makes them feel unsafe because
Yeah.
they're co-regulating with us.
Yeah. I mean, the research is showing now that we even share a nervous system with our kids until they're about 7 years old. So much of that is just being transferred. You're absolutely right. What was the other thing I was going to say that was coming up as you were saying that? Oh, and then our triggers, right? Because I think it's so easy to be like, oh, well, my son he triggers me when he does that, or my husband triggers me when he does that, or my daughter. And the thing about that is this shift that like our triggers are just our own. Like no one actually triggers us. We become triggered by certain things that we see, but no one triggers us. No one's responsible for triggering us. Those are just red flags that we have areas that we need to focus on and heal and grow through. So when we can kind of shift that and own it and do our work, like you're saying, man, we can bypass like so many years of struggle, tension, like all of that stuff that happens when we stay in denial.
Well, and to unpack that even a little bit more,
Yeah.
I think it's like when we go into sort of blaming
Yeah.
someone else for the way that we're feeling,
Yeah.
right? I think there's a reason for it. I was just talking to my son about this. He's just graduating high school. He's 18. And so the conversations are, I kind of feel like it's like all the years of Mr. Miyagi. It's like paint the fence, wax on, wax off. Now it's all coming together. He's
Beautiful.
fighting
Yeah.
Cobra Kai in real life. And so we're having these conversations, and we were, somebody that he's close to kept getting mad at him. And I said, and I reminded him, and I said, people he's like, sometimes I'll do something annoying and then I apologize, but the apology is not being accepted. And it turns into a bigger thing than I really feel like it needs to be. And I said, people that aren't used to feeling their feelings, like hard feelings, like disappointment or annoyance or fear.
Yes.
So when you're not used to feeling those feelings, I think that it's easier, or it's more familiar to feel anger. And so when you blame someone else, when you're mad at someone else, you channel that emotion into anger, and you're used to feeling anger, right? And then maybe, so it's sort of like an outlet. And I reminded him of the story. I said, remember when Wheezy died? That was our almost 15-year-old dog that she died, and it was dramatic. She had a seizure, I think, and fell into our pool and died. It was really, and he found her. And he was like 13. And I knew, like, it was the end of her life. I knew that it was time, but we just couldn't bring ourselves to put her down. And then, the worst thing happened. And so it was awful. And that night we were all crying and we were all upset. And my husband was concerned because he didn't want one of the kids to blame themselves for, possibly leaving her outside. So he had already decided he was going to take the fall because he was just so worried. He was kind of, he was so worried. He was trying to, so he said, "Oh, I'm just so mad at myself. I came home from work and I could tell she needed to go out, and I left her out, and then I forgot to bring her back inside." That didn't actually happen, but he was like trying to preempt. And he was just like, "Oh, I'm just so mad at myself." And Corey looked at him and said, "Why do we have to blame anyone? Can't we just be sad?"
Wow.
And I just reminded him, I said, remember when
like
you said,
goosebumps.
I said, remember when you said that, like, we can just be sad. Like, we can feel those hard emotions, and we don't have to go into blaming and anger to divert it. And I said, I think a lot of people don't know how to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for him to even have that revelation just shows that he's already had a lot of conversations around emotions, right? That you were a home that encouraged and allowed this stuff, because I don't think that would even occur to most 13-year-olds. That's such a wise, like, beautiful, profound thing to say. And I think in so many homes, and maybe even how we were raised, like you were kind of alluding to being raised with a rageaholic caregiver, it's like, especially with anger, we do not see healthy expressions of it. We see either it's completely suppressed and there's like no expression of anger, or it's the opposite, right? That like everything's just coming out ragey, both of which are unhealthy. But we don't have a lot of practice growing up. And a lot of us, without realizing it, don't give our kids a lot of practice in feeling these really uncomfortable things.
Will you go into that? Because I can tell that you're well-versed on this. Let's talk about healthy anger, because I'd love to learn more about that and what it looks like, and how we help our kids learn about healthy anger.
Yeah. So anger is, I do love talking about it, because I think especially as women, we have so many stories around anger, and a lot of it is suppressed because we've been told to, like, be a good girl or behave or be easy or make life easier for everyone around us, kind of thing. And it's uncomfortable for us as parents to be around kids who are expressing anger, right? Like that's just not fun to be around. So it's a lot easier to be like, distract your 5-year-old or channel it into something else. But the thing with anger is that it's one of our primary emotions, and it's actually such a powerful indicator of really beautiful things. Like a lot of times when we feel angry, it's because there's something that fundamentally feels unjust or unfair or wrong. And like that kind of anger can prompt us into really powerful change and action that like needs to happen, right? But we don't know what to do with our anger. So either, like I was saying, either we're someone who's like everything comes out all the time, we're always raging, kind of yelling, or you might be listening to this and be like, I'm not angry, right? Like I've never yelled at my kids. Like I'm super chill. And it's probably not the case. You probably are just really practiced in suppressing all of your anger. So when it comes to our emotions, and big ones like anger, the sadness, pain, all of this stuff, all of our emotions, we really only have two things that we can do with our feelings. We can either feel them start to rise up. So we all know what that feels like when like that anger, that rage kind of starts to rise up, and we can greet it with judgment and be like, not the time, not the place. I'm not a psycho. Like I don't yell at my kids or whatever. And immediately everything in us just pushes it all the way back down, and we suppress it. And then it continues to like kind of bubble up and take space within us. And then the thing about anger is it's like one of these kind of leaky emotions. So if we don't have habits to kind of express it in a healthy way, how does it come out, right? It's like, oh, a snide comment here, or a sarcastic comment here, or an eye roll there, to like leak out in ways that were like even surprising to ourselves sometimes. So that's the first thing. The first thing we can do with an emotion like anger. And then the other thing that we can do, instead of when it comes up, greeting it with that kind of judgment, we can instead greet it with compassion, and we can actually feel it and we can actually express it and allow it, instead of being recycled, to be released in a healthy way. And that looks different for different kinds of people, but it's not maybe yelling at our kids, but it might be, and I do this sometimes if I'm really feeling ragey, like I'll just go sit in my car and just scream for 2 minutes and let it out. And then when I come back in, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm ready to like step back in and, resolve the issue that my kids are fighting about or whatever it is. But if we don't have tools and practices to release a lot of that stuff, emotion is energy in motion. It takes up a ton of space within us. So if we don't have practices to release the stuff, especially the big emotions, our capacity to handle life becomes very small. Our window of tolerance becomes very narrow. So then it doesn't take much to set us off, and we're really irritable and we're really edgy and we're really kind of snappy. So as we learn how to express, especially emotions like anger, we increase our bandwidth to handle all the stuff that kids, parenting, life, the mental load, like all of that stuff that gets thrown at us. We just have more capacity.
Like, it's so interesting to me. The mom that I was talking about at the beginning, I said to her, if you can just even put when you start to know, she doesn't even know what the sensations are in her body. Like she can't recognize those cues.
It takes practice.
Yeah. And so, and so hopefully her somatic therapist is going to be helping her with that.
Awesome.
And I said, if you can even just put a hand on your heart, and like you're allowed to say, I'm feeling really annoyed right now. I'm so annoyed.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's not saying to your kid, you're so annoying.
Very
different.
Yep.
Right?
You're right.
It's very different. And I was like, and we were talking about something recently, and I said, even if, and I was learning this from like a nervous system class that I was taking, I said, I know this sounds crazy, but she has little kids. I was like, if you have older kids, they'll call you out on being a weirdo. But if you have little kids, like there's no one watching, you have little kids and you're about to just rage, like you could get on the floor and roar like a lion and like on all fours and be like, I feel like a lion right now. I feel so angry. I think I just need to roar. Anyone that wants to join me. And like,
I love that.
Most likely your girls are going to get down on the floor and start roaring like lions too.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's following the impulse, right? Like there's an impulse in you to release all of that rage and aggression and sound and everything. And I love the idea of having your kids join in so it's not so scary. I love that. And there's so many different ways to express that. Like, I don't know, have some pool noodles around the house. And when you feel that coming on, grab your kids and go in the backyard and just like slam them on the ground or,
Right.
do some sprints around the driveway and kind of get some of that energy going while you're screaming, like whatever it looks like. But, like you were saying at the beginning, so much more is caught than taught, right? So just like engaging your kids, letting them see you do that in a way that feels safe, obviously, for everyone involved. That's like, those are real life skills that we're teaching our kids.
I mean, can you imagine did you learn this stuff as a little kid?
No, I don't know. I don't know if any of us did. It just wasn't what people were talking about 40, 50 years ago when they were raising kids. Like,
I don't think I would have had,
no.
several decades long monkey on my back smoking addiction, closet smoking addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. And I don't think I would have had, I mean, even just in the past 7, 8 years, I've had to learn how to like cry. Where like for so long, it was just like, oh, I'm strong. I don't even cry at movies. I'm not one of those dramatic girls or
Same.
women. Right.
Same.
And then I'm like,
Same.
oh, Michelle, that's actually really holding you back. Like that's actually not as
Yeah.
good of a thing as you've made it out to be. But I literally didn't know how because it had felt so unsafe for my whole life. And I was completely unaware.
Well, what happened for me was I've suppressed the rage so much that all of a sudden it was at the end of 2018. Never, ever have I had a bad back. And my back, it was all in my lower back.
Yeah.
And I literally was pretty much in bed for almost an entire month.
Shoot.
Like my body just gave up.
So how did you attribute that to rage? Like what was the connection there that was like, oh, that's what's causing this?
It was a crazy time. I mean, and I'm not one to like I don't take to the bed.
Yeah.
Right? Like I mean, I had that. I've always been that lone wolf, right? Like you, like I'm not crying. I'm not dramatic.
No.
I've got this.
Yeah.
I figure things out. I take action. I figure things out. I'm not a victim.
That's
right. And so I was tough as nails. And it was the end of 2018. I had a lot of kind of big things happen that year. Sort of full circle kind of childhood trauma figuring out. And I didn't take the time to process.
Yeah.
And it was a milestone year for my youngest son. It was like he was having a bar mitzvah. I was planning, and it was almost, and all of a sudden my back went out and I've never experienced this kind of pain.
Wow.
And the interesting thing is my husband's had back issues for years. And I always kind of was like, cause I'm like, I don't get sick a lot. I was like, really, like your pain tolerance is low. Like I would gaslight him. I would tell him his pain tolerance was low.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
That's
something I do.
I bullied him at times. I was like such a baby. Like, I mean, and now all of a sudden my back was a mess and I went to all these doctors. Everybody was giving me, muscle relaxers and going into I had all these basically like well-intentioned drug dealers who were like, here, try these pills. Try this foam roller thing. Try this.
Yeah.
I went to all these doctors and nothing. I didn't have a herniated disc. I didn't have nothing. And it was excruciating to the point that like to get out of bed, and I'm an active person.
Yeah.
So to get out of bed would take me 15 minutes. Like I had to roll, and then put my foot on the floor. And to the point that eventually I just had to just stay in bed and completely take a break. And like my family, I was like, how are things going to run? My husband was like, we've got it. You're a mess. And then somebody told me about a documentary that was based on Dr. Sarno's work. And Dr. Sarno, he lived to be like 90 something. He just died a few years ago. And he's written all these books connecting back pain to unprocessed anger,
Emotions.
unprocessed rage. And they said, you can learn about his work through this documentary. Howard Stern, Larry David, all these famous people are in it, and it's called All the Rage. And he was kind of laughed out of traditional medicine. I think his practice was always connected to NYU. So he was a traditional doctor, but people would come to him and he would say, your back pain is connected to unprocessed rage.
Wow.
And now I think after his death, the world has caught up and we know that
Yes.
there's a mind-body connection.
Wow.
And once I learned about that, I really started journaling, processing, crying,
Yeah.
sort of, really looking at this big experience I had regarding this early childhood trauma that I hadn't taken the time to process.
Yeah.
I felt all my feelings. I realized all the people in my life that, it was non-reciprocal relationships, a lot of codependency.
Yeah.
And I learned about boundaries. And after that, when I finally started feeling better and got out of bed, I announced even to my husband, I said, unless your names are Alec, Avery, and Corey, my 3 kids, I am not your mom. I'm no longer momming the world.
Wow.
And that was, yeah.
Wow. What a powerful stand. But your body, right, had been absorbing that for so long.
And it couldn't anymore.
That's right.
And I've never felt so out of control too. Like I'd always been a very, and then all of a sudden this body, I mean, to be in bed for almost a month as a mom, I was like, we're about to throw this bar mitzvah. I got things to do. I was running my business. Like I was working from the bed, literally doing coaching calls from the bed.
Oh my gosh. And it's kind of what I love about your story, or that part of it too, is like nothing heals by pushing harder. And I think for so many of us, we've been taught the opposite, right? It's like, I'm just going to like push through this, or I can it'll go away eventually, or like whatever. If it's physical pain or emotional pain or whatever, it's like, just keep going. It's not really how things heal. Like it took actual softening for you and feeling and journaling and all of these things that were probably very different from how you had been dealing with stuff before to find your healing through that.
Yeah, I would say 100%. And also just, it was a softening. It was nurturing myself like I never had ever in my life. It was
reparenting yourself in a lot of ways, probably.
It was 100% nurturing what I for sure never received. My kids talked about that for years. Like, you were so mean, Mom. That's what they said. You were just so mean. And I think it was healthy anger. I think, I was feeling so bad. And so they would come and they were so used to me doing so much for them, or just, holding down the fort.
Yeah.
And so they would come and they would ask me like dumb questions, things that they should know.
Yeah.
Or, well, what are we supposed to? And I would snap at them. I'd be like, I don't know. What do you think you're supposed to do?
Go figure it out.
Like, really? How old are you? And so I was out of F's. I was done. And so I wasn't like, what the hell is wrong with you? But I was like, what do you want from me? And my daughter, she would talk about it for years. She's like, gosh, remember when your back went out and you were just so mean? And I was like, I was mean. I did not feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really didn't feel good. And I think it was just time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a journey, right? It's like, these things will just happen and we're like, oh, like I've been wanting to whatever it is, right? I've been wanting to like learn how to set boundaries, or I've been wanting to like, I know I shouldn't be the person doing the things for all the people, but we don't really do anything about it. And then something like that happens and it's like, oh man, like we don't got a choice anymore. Like we just got to
Right.
change some stuff up.
It was chosen for me.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was, and I think it needed to happen. Like
Yeah.
I have no regrets. I'm like, thank goodness that happened, because
Yeah.
if that hadn't happened, like now when my back starts acting up a little bit, I haven't had another bout like that since, but there's been times where it has started acting up a bit. And I have a really close friend, and she'll say, who are you pissed at? Like,
Yeah.
just give it to me. Let's
Yeah.
not let it fester.
Your
Who are
red
you pissed at?
flag.
Yeah. Who are you
Yeah.
pissed at? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. She's like, what are you pissed about? There's something. We know that your body's speaking.
That's right. That's a wise friend. That's a good friend. I would love to just pick your brain too around, because I mean, this is the teaching that you do, right? Around parenting
Yeah.
children who are strong-willed, or whatever term you want to use. Presumably showing up with a lot of anger or outbursts or rage or however, knowing what you know and what you've learned and experienced yourself. Like what are some, like for the moms listening who are like, oh yeah, I have a kid who's just like angry or goes from like 0 to 100 so fast. How are some ways we can support our kids through that? Like what's your snippet to parents who are like raising some angry kids?
Okay. So these kids, the way I describe them, like they are the loves of my life. They
Mm.
are, I understand them. And so really
Mm.
what I do is translate what the behavior actually means.
That's good.
Um, because kids kids don't kids are designed actually to be cooperative.
Yeah.
Even, and so the ones that are showing up with strong-willed behavior, I actually think they're the most honest ones. Like they're not going to just suck it up and store all of whatever unprocessed
Yeah.
emotion in their body and then rebel when they're teenagers,
Yeah.
or wait till their back goes out when they're in their 40s.
Right.
Like they're here at 3, at 5, at 7, letting you know there is something that is making me feel out of control inside my body. And that's
Yeah.
why I'm acting this way outside my body.
Yep.
And so I think what I've realized after doing this for so many years and sort of decoding that strong-willed behavior is I'm a good pattern sleuther. And so we have to find out always, like, what happened right before, like what
Mm-hmm.
is the child, because there's more to the story, right?
Yes.
So we can know when a kid is in, when they go full terrorist mode, right?
Yeah.
Which a lot of these kids, they're living in that state, so it doesn't
Yeah.
take much for them just to go full terrorist. And there's practices that are similar to some of the practices that we've been talking about,
Yeah.
which is, when you have a kid that goes into full blown terrorist mode, just know they are not in their thinking brain.
Mm-mm.
Anything you teach them in that moment,
Not the time for it.
it's actually, you're not teaching them anything.
No.
You're just adding extra input to an already,
Overwhelmed. Yep.
overwhelmed nervous system. Like their nervous system is blown.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like if somebody was bleeding and, and you were like, oh, let me stick my finger out. How does this knife feel inside your wound? So
Exactly.
anything you say to them in that moment
Yeah.
is just adding more to their pain, and it's making it worse. So the best thing we can do when we have is just in your mind, your job is safety.
Yes.
And so if this child is behaving in a way that's completely out of control, they feel out of control in their body.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes if we've got a really aggressive child, we may have to, like I call it the human weighted blanket.
Yeah.
Like we may have to, wrap our arm, sort of bear hug them from behind, but
Yes.
you're not squeezing them. You're not restraining them. You
Pressure.
are,
Yep.
your deep pressure. You're thinking
Yep.
of yourself as a human weighted blanket. Like
Love that.
and you're not saying anything. And because you're not it's not eye contact, because eye contact in those moments can feel sort of predatory.
Yeah.
So like if you're behind and you're holding them and you're not telling them to breathe,
That's right.
but you're breathing and you're doing the sniff, sniff, slow. And if you have to, if you want to just have some reassurance and you're right behind them, you use your low, slow, late night FM DJ voice, which is very grounding to the
So good.
very grounding to the nervous system.
Yes.
And you're like, I'm right here. I got
Yeah.
you. I got you.
Yeah.
I'm going to help. I'm going to help you feel safe. I'm not
That's it.
going anywhere.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I'm right here. So in the moment, you're doing that. Out of the moment, afterwards, where we really want to go and we want to tell them that behavior is unacceptable, blah, 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 blah. Stop. That's not going to teach them anything either. We do teach our kids tools to manage their upset in a civilized way so that they can stop feeling like a terrorist, because that's a terrible feeling.
Yes.
But we've got to do a little pattern sleuthing. We have to ask ourselves, like, what was going on right before? Like, instead of having the sentences going through your head, like, he's such a control freak, or he thinks that he's, he doesn't listen to anyone. He has no respect for me. A lot of times we're telling ourselves those lies when it really is just a little kid who's basically saying, I feel unsafe in my body. Something happened and it made me feel unsafe in my body.
Yeah.
So it might be that, they're just, pissed because they're starving.
Right.
And they're used to, when they have a complete meltdown, they, get all the sugar or the cookies or whatever. And so they're pissed that you said it was too close to dinner and they couldn't have the cookie.
Yeah.
Right. But it might also be that they have a sibling where that sibling is, doing something or did something that was not okay with them. And they know that the sibling is always going to cry, or they're going to be blamed, and that they don't even know how to, they don't know how to respond to something that is conflictual with their sibling. And so they know that when their sibling does something that upsets them or pisses them off, that there's going to be a lack of justice for them, because because they always take it up a notch and like smack the sibling or do something that makes them, I like to say, wronger. And so then the sibling never is accountable for the initial wrongdoing. And so they feel like, this is unfair. And so there is more to the story. And I think when we take the time to really kind of figure out what's going on here, then we can talk about it out of the moment. Then we can start to help bring a sense of safety and justice and fairness. And they know that, like, we're their person. Like I'm your girl. Like, I'm your mom. I'm the mama. I've got you. Like, you can talk to me about anything, and I will not allow you to hurt yourself or anyone else. My job is to keep you safe.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love everything about that. I'm hearing so much. Yes. Safety and reassurance and connection. And then the boundary of like, I'm the parent and I'm going to also, this is what we're going to allow in our home, and no one's going to hurt each other, or however that looks. And in your like pattern sleuthing, something, I love that so much, because something we say a lot on our podcast is, how can we choose curiosity over criticism, or curiosity over judgment, right? For ourselves, for our kids. And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's like, hey, how can I take a look and be like, how did we get here? Like, what's going on? What's causing this? And then greet it with compassion, which is what I'm hearing in all of this. Like, there's a reason why you're getting so upset. There's something going on here. You're not just crazy, right? Like, none of us, there's a reason for everything that we do in any given moment. And when we can get curious about that, that's such a powerful place of parenting, I think, to be, or wifing, or whatever.
And I think it's really hard when you have someone in your life, even your own child, who shows up in these ways that they're not like, it's not likable. Like this behavior is hard to be around.
Yes.
And so to be able to get curious when you have a kid that's hurting their sibling or saying, you're the worst mom ever, I hate you, or, you know, things that like
triggering, super triggering.
really triggering, right? And so then to be like, how can I get curious? Something must have happened, right? Like I just want to point out that it's hard to do. It's hard to say, you know, it's hard to find those sentences in your head of, I'm seeing them as disrespectful but all behavior is communication. So something happened. I have to know something happened. And if you have a kid that is so defensive and angry and quick to set off, you know, you have to also remember that they are used to this pattern of, I'm the mean kid. I'm the one
that
who
identity they've taken on.
So it's sort of this like self-fulfilling prophecy. Like they're going through the world, maybe at school, their teacher doesn't like them. The other kids, you know, other kids see them as the mean kid, the annoying kid, because they don't know how to kind of immerse themselves into play with other kids. That's their identity. So they feel crappy about themselves. And now they're just taking that out on there. It's like, oh, will you be my human punching bag? And will you be my human punching bag? So I say it's harder to parent these kids. Let's just be clear. It's super triggering. It's hard to bring that curiosity. And at some point we have to say to ourselves, okay, well, somebody has to be the grown up. And since I'm the one who drew the short straw and I have the fully developed brain, like I got to do this. I got to do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so helpful. And I think it's also so affirming, right, to parents who are living this and are like, that all sounds so nice, but it's actually like really freaking hard.
Really hard.
Yeah.
It is.
And then I'm sure even just the stories that come up then about what does that mean about my parenting? Where did I go wrong? What did I do when that's probably not the story?
Right. Like I don't think anyone who listens to parenting podcasts, you know, and really wants to be maybe the parent that they didn't have, you know, give their kids this amazing childhood, be a great mom. I don't think anyone who has that dream is wanting to raise the mean kid.
No.
So when your child shows up in these ways that make it hard for you to, like, you love them, but it makes it hard for you to like them. And then you're thinking, if it's hard for me to like them, how is the rest of the world going to receive them?
Yeah.
Right? Like this is layered and loaded and difficult. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank God there's people like you out there supporting and teaching and educating for, you know, the benefit for the parents and the benefit for those kids. I love that you have a heart for them.
Well, and thank you for teaching us more about how to be a calm mom. And I would love to sort of, you know, just if we could end this, because of course I do everything out of order. When you decided to name, you know, this work that you do, the calm mom, I would love to know more about, like, where were you before that you were like, okay, I need to become a calm mom. I'm going to learn how to be a calm mom. Or were you always a calm mom? I don't know.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I actually struggled a lot with not struggled, but like in naming the podcast. Because when I started it, it was just the motherhood podcast. And then I really started to get passionate about the nervous system. And then it kind of like turned into the Calm Mom podcast. But I didn't want to be part of this perpetuation of an idea that we have to be calm all the time to be good moms or effective moms or loving moms or whatever, because that's just not true and it's not realistic. And but I think there are also tools that we can use to show up. Calm is safe, right? And that's a lot of what you're teaching. So that's really the goal, is to be resilient and safe, a safe place for our kids, and be able to have access to all those parts of our brain that we do when we're calm. and then kind of to answer your question is that I thought I was always calm. I was always super chill. I was not like a very vocal person. Like if I got in fights with someone, I wasn't the yeller or the hitter or the whatever. I was the like shut down, quiet, numb out kind of person. So I thought I was calm. I was just really good at suppressing all of that anger. But it culminated, and then this journey started in really deep burnout. I had been a trial attorney for 10 years at that point. I had 2 babies, 15 months apart. I was, nursing while negotiating settlements of cases and taking depositions with my baby in the office, like my 3-week-old next to me. And just like my kind of like you with your back, my body was just like, fine, you're not going to pay attention to this. I'm going to shut you down. And it did. And then that took a whole journey of like really re-examining everything that I was doing and why I was doing it, and facing how miserable I actually was face to face, and edgy and irritable and resentful of my husband, and not communicating as well as I might have liked to think I would communicate. All these stories I had around what it looks like to be strong or be weak or be, whatever stories we tell ourselves about so many things. And as someone who, had spent time in law and just loved being in the logical side of my brain, the scariest thing I could think of was to start feeling emotions and showing emotions. And then, man, as I started to like lean into that discomfort, I figured out and learned like, oh, this is what true strength actually looks like, or this is how I heal some of this stuff, instead of burying my head in the sand like I'm so good at doing. And that was kind of the genesis for like so many women in my circle and that I was just running into, feeling a lot of the same things: anxiety, overwhelm, burnout. This is like the beginning of the pandemic. So, those strong-willed kids, or all the kids, are now with you 24/7. And it's like, we just need some help. And that's really where it all started. So not so much about wanting to be calm, but like a re-expression of what calm actually means and looks like.
Oh, I love that. I have a lot of sayings that I've just said for many years. I didn't even realize I did. And then at some point, Lindsay on my team, she like polled all the members, and she said, what are some of the, whatever. She's like, sounds obnoxious to even say, what are some of the Randyisms you hear all the time? Yeah. And I would say the number one thing was calm people solve problems.
Ooh.
And that's just something I would say all the time in, what we tell our kids, just in general. And for me, calm people solve problems is just like a line that we can use when our kids are wanting to fight and power struggle. And it's like, we're going to take a breather. We're going to come back when we're both calm, because calm people solve problems. Nothing's going to get accomplished
so
here.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to say it's a Randyism, and I'm going to use it.
Use it.
I don't really teach this, but something, as you were saying that, something that was coming up for me, that I like, those mental things that we just say affirmations to ourselves too. In those moments is I'm like, peace begins with me. And it's kind of the same idea. Like if I want this to be calm or look peaceful or be different, like it's going to begin with me as the parent. And then, right, like everyone step away, regulate, come back, because calm people solve problems. Love it.
I love it. I think that's a perfect place to end. This has been so fun, Michelle.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much for just making the space to have these conversations, believing that, we all need it. I need it, certainly. And I know a lot of women listening are going to be, have some aha moments and some new practical tools. So thank you.
Thank you. So fun. Thanks for listening today, guys. I hope you picked up some tips, tools, maybe some baby steps for creating more balance and boundaries in your life. And I just wanted to let you know, if you want to continue moving the needle forward in creating this for yourself, having a happier household, I want you to go to my website and check out mastermindparenting.com. We have 3 beginning programs, and if you need some accountability and more support, then please look for the one that would be a good fit for you. And as always, we're on all the social channels under Mastermind Parenting. On Instagram, it's mastermind_parenting. And, periodically I do pop up on different Instagram lives, Facebook lives, where I give you teaching and coaching. And I love engaging with you live to help you help your strong-willed kids so that they can feel better, because when they feel better, they do better. And I love getting to know you guys. So thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Super, super appreciative.